If you've got somewhere between about $5 and $15,000 and you want a four-wheel drive that's easy to climb into, easy to see out of, and cheap enough to run that it doesn't eat your pension, there are six of them sitting on the used lots and the classifieds in this country right now that almost nobody is bidding against you for. Six. And by the end of this, I'll have given you every one of them, the real money they cost to buy and to feed, the exact fault that bites each one, and the single question you ask the seller that tells you more than a full inspection would. Here's the strange bit. The reason these are cheap has almost nothing to do with whether they're good. It's fashion mostly. A model gets a reputation on a forum, or a brand pulls out of the country, or the badge stops looking modern, and the price falls off a cliff while the engineering underneath stays exactly as good as it was the day it left the factory. That's the whole opportunity here, and it only exists for people who are willing to buy the unfashionable thing. I've flushed enough rear diffs on one of the vehicles on this list to know the smell of the burnt fluid before the bottle's open, which is a strange thing to be an expert in. But here we are, two things to hold on to while we go. Number 4 on this list can be a genuinely sensible $6,000 car or a $5,000 gearbox bill. And the thing that decides which one you're looking at is a single word in the advertisement. Miss it and you've bought the wrong car. And number 6 is the only vehicle here with a proper 2-speed transfer case and a locking center differential. Real old-fashioned four-wheel drive. And it's cheap for one reason that has absolutely nothing to do with how well it was built. Before the list, the thing nobody selling your car will mention. For an older driver, the specification sheet is close to useless. Kilowatts don't matter, 0 to 100 doesn't matter. What matters is a short list of physical measurements that manufacturers don't publish because they're embarrassing. The first is hip point, how high the seat cushion sits off the ground. There's a sweet spot, roughly level with your own hip when you're standing beside the car, where you slide in sideways and sit down instead of dropping down or climbing up. Too low and you're getting out of a bathtub. Too high and you're mounting a horse. Nearly every modern SUV has crept past that sweet spot because tall looks expensive, and the cars on this list are mostly from the era before that happened. Second is glass. Look at what's around the driver's shoulder, the width of that pillar between the front door and the rear door. Pedestrian impact rules and rollover rules push those pillars from a hand's width to a forearm's width over about 15 years, and every centimetre of it came out of your ability to see a cyclist. A good rule of thumb sounds glib, but it works. Sit in the driver's seat, put your hands at 10 and 2, and see how much of the world is blocked by metal. Older designs win this badly. Third is sill height and door swing. Wide doors that open close to 90 degrees, and a low, narrow sill you're not dragging your leg over. That's it. Those three things, in that order. Now the running comparison for all six, because it's the argument underneath this entire list. Every one of these cars was built in the last era when a normal mechanic could fix everything on it with normal tools, and everyone has at least one component the manufacturer told you would never need attention. That claim is the trap on all six. We'll come back to it hard. Number 1, the Suzuki Grand Vitara 5-door 2005 to about 2016. This is the one that gets ignored because Suzuki has a reputation for small cars, and people assume small means flimsy. It isn't. From 2005, this thing ditched a separate chassis for a monocoque body, but Suzuki built a ladder frame-like structure into the floor, kept the high ground clearance, and, this is the bit, kept a proper low-range transfer case. In the mid-2000s, you could count the vehicles this size with genuine low range on one hand. Owners who took them from Sydney out to the Flinders Ranges reported doing it without drama. For a senior driver, it's close to ideal in the ways that count. It's short, so you can park it. The steering's light, the seat's at the right height. Blind spots are minimal because the design predates the fashion for gun-slit windows. The controls are big knobs, and switches you can operate wearing gloves, and there isn't a touchscreen buried 3 menus deep to change the fan speed. Money. You're looking at roughly $5,000 to $9,000 for a tidy 5-door 2.4 petrol automatic with a service history, and the market for these is soft enough that patience is rewarded. Now the honest part. The 2.4 petrol is not economical. Suzuki's official figure is in the high 8s, and I've read owner accounts of 14 litres per 100 around town, which frankly sounds high to me and probably reflects a heavy right foot and a roof rack, but the truthful range for town driving is somewhere around 11 to 13. 4-speed automatic. It is what it is. The real watch-out is the all-wheel drive system. European workshop data flags the viscous coupling failing somewhere past 100,000 kilometers, at which point the thing quietly stops sending drive rearward and you'd never know from the driver's seat. I'll be straight with you. That data comes from a market that uses these cars differently to how we do, and I haven't seen good Australian numbers to confirm the same failure window here. So treat it as a thing to check, not a thing to fear. On the test drive, full lock, slow, on gravel. Any binding or hopping, walk. That fault is invisible unless you know to look for it. The next car's fault is invisible unless you know to smell for it. Number 2, the Honda CR-V, the RE model, 2007 to 2012. Short entry because there's honestly not much to say. It's boringly, relentlessly good. Roomy, quiet 2.4-litre 4 with a timing chain rather than a belt and an on-demand rear drive system Honda calls real-time. A traction aid for wet roundabouts and gravel, not an off-roader, and anyone who takes one bush comes back complaining. 4-star ANCAP from its day. Around 10 litres per 100, 7 to 12,000 buys a good one. The one thing, that rear differential uses a specific Honda dual pump fluid and it degrades well before the interval the book gives you. The symptom is a judder or a hop at slow speed on full lock, warm. It's a cheap fix if you catch it and an expensive one if you don't. And check the tyres match. Mismatched rolling diameters will chew that drive line on their own. Number 3 is where I want to slow down because it's the one I'd put my own mother in. The Subaru Forester, the SH generation, 2008 to about 2012. Visibility, that's the headline, and it isn't a small thing. Subaru built this one with an upright tall glass house and slim pillars at a moment when everyone else was going the other way. And the difference at a T intersection or a diagonal supermarket car park is the difference between craning your neck and simply looking. The driving position sits right in that hip point sweet spot. The doors open wide and square. Underneath, symmetrical all-wheel drive that's permanently engaged. No button, no mode, no decision for you to make in the rain. Safety kit was comprehensive for the time. Front, side and head airbags, stability control, brake assist across the range from launch. It rides well on our roads. It tows a small van. It's the least dramatic car on this list, and that's the compliment. Now the part that decides whether you get a bargain or a project, and it comes down to which engine is in front of you. Through 2009 and 2010, the non-turbo car uses Subaru's older EJ253, a good, tough, slightly agricultural motor with a rubber timing belt that must be replaced around the 100,000 kilometre mark. Not should, must. If that belt lets go, the valves and the pistons meet, and you're rebuilding a cylinder head. So on any car in that range, you are hunting for one thing in the service book. The belt, the tensioner, the idlers and the water pump, done as a set, with a date and a kilometre reading. If it's there, the biggest bill in that engine's life has already been paid by somebody else, and you're buying the good years. If it isn't there and the car's done $140,000, you're not looking at a $9,000 car. You're looking at a $9,000 car, plus a job that'll run you well over $1,000 at an independent workshop. From 2011, the naturally aspirated cars got the newer FB25, which runs a chain instead of a belt. No timing job, ever. Sounds like a straight win. It isn't. That engine developed a reputation for drinking oil, and I mean genuinely drinking it. There are owners reporting a litre every 1,500 kilometres. Subaru issued a technical bulletin over it and repaired some engines under warranty. Plenty of others got told it was within tolerance. So on the newer engine, the check is different. Pull the dipstick cold and ask the seller flat out how often they top it up. If they hesitate, you have your answer. Reliability otherwise is good. Fresh oil on time, watch for leaks around the engine bay, listen for a whine from the steering pump. 8 to 13,000 for a good automatic, and you get all of that. Notice what's happened 3 cars in. Every single one of these has been a genuinely well-engineered vehicle with exactly one component that will empty your wallet, and in every case the component is one the manufacturer described as either sealed, filled for life, or covered by an interval that quietly assumes you'll have sold the car by then. That's not a coincidence, and it isn't 3 separate accidents. From here the pattern gets sharper, and on number 4 it stops being a maintenance item and becomes the entire purchase decision. Right, you've stuck with me through the boring part, which is the part that actually saves you money, so if this is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe. 3 cars left, and the 4th one is the one I flagged at the start. The single word in the advertisement that separates a good buy from a very expensive mistake. Number 4, the Nissan X-Trail, the T31 2007 to about 2013. Boxy, upright, enormous inside for its footprint, big square doors, and a driving position that's exactly right. As a used buy in the $6,000 to $9,000 bracket, it makes a lot of sense, and the four-wheel drive version is genuinely capable on a beach or a fire trail. Not a Land Cruiser, but far more than a soft-roader. The word is transmission. The 2.5-litre petrol came with either a 6-speed manual or a continuously variable automatic. The manual is fine. The CVT is the problem child of the entire model, and it is not a small problem. A CVT has no gears. It has a steel belt running between two cone-shaped pulleys that squeeze and open to change the ratio. And the entire thing lives or dies on the fluid, its pressure, its cleanliness, its friction properties. When it starts to go, the belt slips and grips and slips again, and you feel it as a shudder pulling away from a standstill, or a hesitation before it picks up reverse. Here's the part I still can't get a straight answer on. Nissan did not schedule a fluid change for these at all under normal use, under what they classed as severe conditions, towing, heavy off-road work. The recommendation came in around 90,000 kilometres. That's it. Australian used car reviewers who look at these for a living have called that schedule madness in print, and their advice is to change the CVT fluid and the transfer case oil every 40,000 kilometres regardless. I've never seen an engineering explanation from Nissan for why the interval was set where it was, and I'm not going to invent one. What I can tell you is that when one of these lets go, owners report bills in the vicinity of $5,000, which is more than the car is worth. So, on the test drive, from cold dead stop, gentle throttle, up a slight rise, any shudder, any metallic noise from the transmission, any hesitation into drive or reverse, walk away. There is no cheap version of that repair. And if the seller can show you a receipt for a CVT fluid change, they've told you something about themselves that no service book stamp does. Buy the manual if you can find one. Buy the CVT only with evidence, and check the tow bar area while you're under there. There were reports of cracking around the factory bar mounts on these. Number 5 is the one I get the most argument about, and the argument is almost always aimed at the wrong engine. The Ford Territory, the SZ Series 2011 to 2016. Australians designed this car for Australian roads and Australian families, and for a certain kind of buyer, it has never been beaten. The cabin is vast, the seats are proper armchairs. Entry and exit is about as good as it gets in an SUV. You sit down into it, not up onto it. The glass area is generous, 5 or 7 seats, 5-star ANCAP for the 2012 model. And the 4.0-litre inline-6 petrol, the Bara, is one of the toughest engines this country ever built. In a state of tune so mild, it's practically idling. Now, the reputation. Ask anybody about a Territory, and they'll tell you the ball joints. And they're right. The earlier cars, the SX and SY from the mid-2000s, had a front-lower control arm ball joint arrangement that was a genuinely poor design and a known weakness. Here's what gets lost. That's a 20-year-old car, not the one I'm recommending. And by the time the SZ arrived, most of the early sins had been sorted. The SZ also brought electric power steering, a 6-speed automatic across the range, and a much better interior. The real decision on an SZ is petrol or diesel. And my read, and I'll flag that this is a judgment call, not a fact, is that most buyers get it backwards. The 2.7-litre V6 turbo diesel was the sales success. It was more than 70% of Territory sales within a year of launch, because it's economical and it tows. But the most common serious complaint on the diesel is failure of the 6-speed automatic behind it. And there was a known failure mode on this transmission family where coolant from the transmission cooler crosses into the gearbox and destroys it comprehensively. That's a very expensive morning. The Petrol 6 drinks more, roughly 10.5 litres per 100 on the official figure, more like 11 or 12 in town, and it's somewhere near $2 a litre. And I'll say plainly that fuel price sources disagree with each other by 20 cents or more, depending on the week in the city. So budget high, that's real money. But the engine will do 300,000 kilometres without complaining. Parts are everywhere because it shares so much with the Falcon, and any mechanic in the country knows it. What to check? Rear suspension bushes, which are a wear item on these and will fail a roadworthy inspection. Door lock actuators and window regulator clips, both of which are annoying rather than serious. And whatever engine you're looking at, get the transmission fluid checked, which brings us to the thing I promised you. 8 to 15,000, depending on kilometers and which side of the diesel question you land on. One car left, and it's the only one here that will actually get you somewhere the others won't. Number 6. The Mitsubishi Pajero NS through NW, roughly 2006 to 2014, and specifically the 3.8-litre petrol V6. This is a real four-wheel drive, super select transfer case, which means you can run two-wheel drive on the highway, four-wheel drive high range on wet bitumen without wrecking the driveline, and low range with a locked center differential when it gets serious. 7 seats, 4-star ANCAP across the post-2006 range with strong side impact scores. Brake towing that climbed to 3 tons, an 88-litre tank. And it's cheap for exactly one reason. It's the petrol. Everybody wants the 3.2 diesel, so the diesel holds its money and the V6 doesn't. The petrol was dropped from the Australian lineup entirely by the middle of the last decade, and the used market treats it as an oddity. The V6 got a variable valve timing upgrade in the NS that lifted it to 184 kilowatts. It's smooth, it's quiet, it revs happily, and one owner made the point that it makes more torque low down than an old naturally aspirated 4.2 diesel Land Cruiser did, while being far more pleasant about it. There is no turbo to fail, no diesel particulate filter to clog, no injectors at $1,500 a set. For a driver doing modest kilometers, and if you're retired, you probably are, that matters more than the fuel figure. But the fuel figure is real. 15 litres per 100 is a fair working number, worse towing, and the short wheelbase 3-door has a smaller tank that leaves you looking for a servo far too often. If you're doing 40,000 a year, buy the diesel. If you're doing 8, the petrol will cost you less over 5 years than the diesel's first big repair. Underbody rust and previous off-road abuse are the checks here. Get under it. Look at the chassis rails, the mounts, the exhaust now. That thing I've been promising you. Look back at what actually threatens you across all 6 of these cars. The Nissan's continuously variable transmission with no scheduled fluid change, the Ford's 6-speed automatic, the Honda's rear differential. In every single case, the item that can cost you thousands is the one you were told not to worry about. There's a word for it in the industry: filled for life, sealed for life, lifetime fluid, and I want you to understand precisely what that phrase means, because it does not mean what you think it means. The ZF 6-speed and 8-speed automatics are among the most common transmissions on Earth. They're in Fords, Jaguars, Land Rovers, BMWs, Chryslers. Several of those manufacturers told owners the fluid was a lifetime fill with no service interval whatsoever. ZF, the company that actually designs and builds them, publishes a service interval every 8 years, or somewhere between 80 and 120,000 kilometers. And I'll note the figure varies between ZF documents, so take the shorter one. That is the manufacturer of the component directly contradicting the manufacturer of the car. So how did lifetime get defined? A specialist who deals with ZF directly asked their engineers, and the answer came back plainly: the transmissions are tested to about 100,000 miles with an acceptable rate of failure on the original fill. That number is past the warranty. It's past the goodwill repair window, which means a failure after that point isn't the car maker's problem anymore. Read that again, because it's the whole game. Lifetime doesn't refer to the life of the transmission. It refers to the life of their liability. When they wrote that word on the page, they weren't making you a promise about the machine. They were making a statement about the calendar. And you can see why they did it. A car with no transmission service on its schedule has a lower advertised cost of ownership than the one parked next to it in the showroom. That's a number that sells cars in a brochure comparison. The fluid change that got deleted to win that comparison didn't disappear. It got moved onto you 10 years later as a gearbox instead of a service. Here's the arithmetic, and it's the part that ought to make you cross. A fluid and pan service on one of these automatics at a decent independent transmission shop is a few $100s. The sort of bill you barely notice once every few years. A replacement transmission is somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000, and the reports vary enough that I'd plan for the top of that. So the word lifetime on a page in a service booklet is worth roughly $5,000 to you in the wrong direction. And it was written by somebody who will never meet you and whose job was finished the day the warranty expired. You're not going to be caught by it now. That's the point of knowing. And there's something a bit larger sitting underneath this, which I've thought about a fair bit. Every car on this list comes from a narrow window, roughly the 15 years before everything got sealed up. In that window, machines were still built with the assumption that somebody would open them. There were drain plugs, there were dipsticks, there were fill points you could reach. A person with a jack, a socket set, and an afternoon could inspect the condition of nearly every consumable in the vehicle and make their own judgment about it. That's not nostalgia. It's a specific and measurable form of independence. When you can look at the fluid yourself, you don't need permission to know how your own property is doing. You're not dependent on a booklet written by somebody with a commercial interest in your not looking. Judgment, actual judgment, the kind you build from having checked 100 dipsticks, is a skill. And skills are the one asset that can't be recalled, discontinued, or subscribed away from you. The cars on this list are cheap partly because they are honest. They'll tell you what's wrong with them if you're willing to look. That's worth more at this end of the market than any feature on any brochure. So here's how to actually do this in order. 1. Decide your kilometers before you decide your car. Under about 12,000 a year, buy petrol and ignore every diesel on the list. The fuel saving will never repay the repair exposure. Over 25,000 the reverse, too. Sit in it before you drive it. Hip point, pillars, sill, door swing. If any of those 4 are wrong, nothing else about the car can fix it, and you should get out. 3. Run a search on the government's Personal Property Securities Register before you hand over anything. It's $2. It tells you whether there's finance owing, whether it's been written off, whether it's been reported stolen. $2 is the cheapest insurance in the entire transaction, and there is no excuse for skipping it. 4. The transmission question, every time. Ask for evidence of a fluid change. If the answer is that it never needed one, you now know exactly what that means, and you should price the job into your offer rather than argue about it. 5. Pay for an independent pre-purchase inspection from someone with no connection to the seller. Around $200 to $300, and the state motoring clubs all offer one. 6. And this is the procedure rather than the rule of thumb. Take the asking price. Add the specific known job that car is due. Timing belt on the older Subaru. Transmission service on the Ford. CVT fluid and transfer case oil on the Nissan. Rear diff fluid on the Honda. Add roadworthy or safety certificate costs, which vary by state, plus stamp duty and registration transfer. That total is the true price. Now compare that true price against the next car on your shortlist calculated the same way, and buy the lower number, not the lower sticker. Every time I've watched somebody get this wrong, it's because they compared advertised prices instead of landed prices. And then the good bit, which is quiet and takes years to notice. The bill that doesn't arrive. The Tuesday you don't spend at a transmission specialist being shown a bag of metal filings. The $5,000 that stays where it is because you spent $400 at the right moment and asked one uncomfortable question of a stranger in a driveway. Now, where are you watching from, and what does it do to cars? Because that's the variable I can't see from here, and you can. Coastal Queensland eats underbodies. The Territory and the Kimberley destroy suspension bushes and air filters. Tasmania and the Alps mean salt and grit. Adelaide and Perth are kind to steel and brutal on plastics and paint. If you've run any of these 6 somewhere genuinely harsh, tell me where and tell me what failed first, because that's information no review can generate, and every one of us buying one of these could use it. And if you think I've called one of these wrong, particularly the Territory, which brings people out of the woodwork, come and say so. Bring the receipt or the kilometer reading and I'll take it seriously. I read the replies, all of them, and the corrections are consistently the best part. If this was useful, subscribing costs you nothing and means the next one turns up. There's one thread here I deliberately didn't pull, and it's been nagging at me. 2 of the cars on this list had known problems that never became recalls in this country, even though the same fault triggered action overseas. I don't yet understand where that line sits, or who decides it, and I'd like to. When I've got it straight, you'll hear about it. Until then, check the fluid, ask the awkward question, and don't buy the fashionable one.